Well, good morning. We're going to begin our presentation. I'd like to welcome all of you to the Interaction of Processes and its Importance to a Successful Audit webinar. My name is Joseph Krolikowski, and I am the Technical Director for Perry Johnson Registrars. Couple of notes before we get started. All of our participants today are on mute, but we absolutely would like to address your questions, so please use the question portion of the dashboard. We will address your questions at the conclusion of our presentation. A very common question that we get is, will this presentation be available after we're finished? The answer to that is yes. We will have copies of the slides available for download shortly after we're finished. And this webinar and all other past PGR webinars can be reviewed with VoiceOver on our website under previously recorded webinars. Our topics for today, we're going to have a little bit of a review of the background on this requirement. We're going to show where this requirement resides, both within the 2008 as well as the 2015 versions of ISO 9001. We're going to explore the idea of what is a process and bring into that the official definition for a process. And we're also going to explore what is not a process. And finally, we're going to have some strategies for you to meet the requirement with minimal change to your existing documentation. Now, back in 2014, PJR was given a mandate by the accreditation bodies, and we were told that we were not being firm enough on the interaction of process documents that we were reviewing in the context of an audit. Now, one of the requirements that PJR is tasked with fulfilling is generally referred to as audit program management, and it appears in the ISO 17021 standard. That is the standard that PJR is accredited to. And that standard has a clause which reads in part, an audit program for the full certification cycle shall be developed to clearly identify the audit activity or activities required to demonstrate that the client's management system fulfills the requirements for certification. So in other words, when we perform an audit, when we prepare an audit report, the content needs to reflect your management system as the auditee. It cannot just be a stock group of processes, a stock group of activities. It has to be personalized, if you will, to reflect what you have done. Now, our policy on this, again, we've been compelled to make this our policy, is that we adhere to your interaction of processes and only your interaction of processes in the preparation of our audit report, audit plan, and so forth. Now, if the interaction of process document doesn't do a good job of identifying what the processes are, it's very, very difficult for us to prepare our audit package and meet this requirement. So we have instructed our auditors to be very careful in reviewing the interaction of processes document and to issue a nonconformance if it does not identify processes in an appropriate or effective manner. Now, let's take a look at where this requirement exists in ISO 9001-2008. There are three clauses that are particularly pertinent in this regard. In 4.1a, it says that the organization shall determine the processes that are needed for the quality management system and their application throughout the organization. 4.1 goes on to say that the organization shall determine the sequence and interaction of these processes. Now, those two clauses alone are kind of the foundation for this requirement, the basis for this requirement. But of course, ISO 9001-2008 additionally, in section 422C, requires that the organization establish and maintain a quality manual that includes a description of the interaction between the processes of the quality management system. Now, if we transition to ISO 9001-2015, those first two requirements, for the most part, are unchanged. If we look at this time, it's section 4.4.1. Again, the organization shall determine the processes needed for the quality management system. And in 441B, the organization shall determine the sequence and interaction of these processes. So that part of it is completely unchanged. The difference now is in 442. ISO 9001-2015, of course, does not mandate that a quality manual be maintained, but it does state that you shall maintain documented information to support the operation of processes. And among the many sanctioned interpretations for that item, the requirement that you still have a firm statement of what your processes are and how they interact, that be maintained as documented information. Let's take a look at the official definition for a process. This is taken from the ISO 9000-2015, that's the Fundamentals and Vocabulary document. And that document identifies a process as follows: a set of interrelated or interacting activities that use inputs to deliver an intended result, or outputs. Now, the key aspect of this is that bit where it says interrelated or interacting activities, plural. This establishes a key aspect of what a process is not. A process should not be thought of as a single step. It's a series of activities that are focused on a shared goal. So what are some examples of what we would accept as a process designation? If you look at PJR's clients, these processes tend to be very common. Sales process, purchasing process, production or manufacturing process, shipping, design development, and so forth. We tend to see these process names used multiple times by numerous organizations. Now, your IOP should always reflect what you think your processes are, what you have established your processes to be. We're going to be looking at some examples a little bit later, and you'll see where organizations have made an earnest effort to have the interaction of processes document be very personal, be very reflective of what they do. If you come to Perry Johnson and say that your quality system is made up of 4 key processes, say sales, purchasing, production, and support, that is completely acceptable. As long as what we see when we are in your facility squares with those 4 processes, that will be considered completely acceptable. Now, in terms of what is not a process, a couple of things that can make this less than acceptable. The IOP documents that are rejected most often are the ones that present steps within a single process. So, for example, if we look at an IOP document and it shows create work order, issue production schedule, complete work order, package product, ship product, it's conceivable that all 5 of those steps are part of a single process, but in all likelihood, they are not processes by themselves. An IOP that raises those items, and often those IOPs have multiple steps on them, 20 steps, 30 steps. So again, the question becomes, are you telling us that you have 20 processes, 30 processes, or is what we're looking at here a set of steps that have been outlined but without process designations? Also, an IOP that presents sections from the standard as the processes processes should also be regarded with concern. Now, if you think about it, how many organizations actually have a process that they would call resource management or product realization? These are designations from the standard. These are not going to typically be process names. An interaction of process document that bears items as those types of things as your processes. We've instructed our auditors to issue a nonconformance and say that this is not an accurate reflection of what I'm seeing as your processes. Now, there are some strategies that you can deploy to make your IOP work a little more effectively. We recognize that for many of our clients, you've put a lot of thought into this, a lot of consideration into the development of your IOP. And additionally, we're also well aware that it's a little disconcerting, a little jarring to be told that something that we have accepted in past years, we're now telling you that it's unacceptable. So we wanted to share with you some ideas on how you can retain the work that you've done, but also meet the audit program management requirement in a more effective way. So what we're going to do is review a sample of an interaction of processes document. We're going to make two key improvements to it. Please note that this example is not reflective of any particular PJR client. It was created solely for the purpose of this presentation. Okay, now here is the raw interaction of processes document. Now, as you can see here, we have 12 boxes and 2 decision diamonds. Now, when you look at this, are we to presume, again, does this organization have 12 individual processes? And if that's the case, do we look at something like order entered in the mainframe system? Is that a standalone process? Sales and work orders issued, is that a standalone process? And so forth. And again, this would run probably counter to what we are observing in the organization itself. It's conceivable that those first 3 items are all being done by the same group of people as part of a single activity, a single process. So we're going to improve this, as I said, in 2 ways. First, we're going to identify the support processes. Now, some of the IOP documents that get rejected, they lack a specific place to identify what many companies consider to be their support processes. Now, we'll make a note here that both ISO 9000 and 9001, neither of those standards draw any particular distinction between classification of processes. But we do see that a number of our clients have a ranking system: key processes, core processes, and then support processes. Now, as a result of that, there are times when those support processes get left off of the IOP. So they're still part of your quality system, but because they are in a supportive role, you've left them out. So those types of things, what are we talking about? We're talking about management review, internal auditing, training, corrective action. So let's see if we can find a place for those items on our IOP model. Okay, so you'll note in the lower right-hand corner, we have now created a standalone box simply titled Support Processes. And the idea behind this is that it influences all of the other activities of the quality system equally. In other words, these support processes support the entire system at large, which is why they are not connected to any particular process, but should be thought of as connected to every aspect of what the quality system does. Now, the other improvement that we're going to do here is to create an IOP key. Now, this is a very popular strategy that we've seen. where again, we're keeping the IOP as is, but we're going to use a key. We can use numbering, we can use alpha characters. For our example today, we're actually going to use colors. And again, this helps us know what the processes are and allows us to keep the IOP as is. So let's make that final improvement. Okay, so now where we originally had 12 boxes and 2 decision diamonds, we have now boiled this down to 6 processes. And those 6 processes are shown in the lower left-hand portion here in the process key. We have orange for sales order entry. We have green for a purchasing process, yellow for production, red for quality. And as it happens, we have 2 standalone processes that were called out on here, shipping and support. Now we've really got something. By these 2 small adjustments, we've kept the content of the IOP just as it was before, but we now know what the processes are, and we now have an appropriate reflection of support activity. This is an IOP that is ready for audit assessment. Now, additionally, we wanted to share with you some examples of other approaches to meeting this requirement. Obviously, we have seen and accepted a number of different methods on doing this. Now, these are all from real organizations. Permission was granted for the IOP to be used in all cases. Okay, this is our first example. It flows from top to bottom. Again, you'll note the disconnected support process grid on the left-hand side here. And you'll note that the idea here is that this is a very linear flow of activity. We have contracts flowing into purchasing and engineering, production scheduling, production, a final quality, and then shipping. Here's a slightly different approach to the interaction of processes. Now, part of what I would like for you to make note of here is the unique nature of the process names. We have a process here called overhaul. We have a process called inventory management. And what the preparer has done here is attempted to reflect that, yes, there is a top to bottom flow of sorts here, but there's also a good deal of cross-process interaction. And then, of course, on the left-hand side, we have an item referred to as management related. This can be certainly taken as the support activities that we were referring to in earlier IOP documents. This particular approach is typically referred to as the Swimlane Model. In this instance, we have 4 named processes: sales, purchasing, production, and support. And the idea here is that sales and purchasing begin independently of each other. Sales has order receipts, and purchasing is in the process of reviewing inventory. But they kind of meet in the middle, so to speak. We have receiving of purchased items, which enables the issuance of work orders, and then all of that kind of culminates in the injection molding that starts off the production process. And then again, of course, support, kind of providing general support to the other 3 core activities here. Here's another model for demonstrating the processes. In this case, the organization has opted to signify what the core processes are by way of highlighting. So we would consider those to be standalone activities, and anything unhighlighted is considered support. So in this case, our audit report would reflect 6 processes in total. We would have sales order entry, purchasing, repair and return, service exchange, distribution, and support. And you'll note, of course, again, the unique nature of these process names. Service exchange, distribution, these are unique to this particular organization. In conclusion, PJR wants to ensure that we provide our clients with a value-added audit that meets all applicable requirements. We do hope that the points of our presentation today will help you develop an even better understanding of what your processes are. I do thank you for your time, and I'll unlock the question portion of the dashboard if anybody has any questions today. Okay, well, it looks like we don't have any questions, so I'll bid you all a good day. Thank you very much.